cooldudeachyut. Hey, how's it going everybody? It's the Game Economist back with another Dark Souls 3 PvP video. Today we'll be taking a look at the Gargoyle Flame Hammer. I remember the first time I ran into this weapon, I was so excited to give it a try because it's a really gorgeous hammer, isn't it? Look at the design on this thing. It's got like a flamethrower weapon art as well. It's very, very cool. But we start to run into problems when we give it a proper analysis and we start trying to use it in try-hard duels. So let's go over that. The very first problem is that it doesn't do a lot of damage. You know, the scaling on it's pretty poor. It doesn't matter what you're putting points into. It could be strength, intelligence, or faith, which it scales on all three. So maybe in theory it's a lot better at very, very high SL levels. But also you could consider using it at very, very low SL levels. It has a strength requirement of 22, which is very, very small compared to most great hammers. But if you're at like the usual SL 125, 120, that's where all the tryhards are kind of floating around right in that SL level. If you're trying to use it at that point, you know, you really should be using a different great hammer because you get better scaling, you get better damage. With the Gargoyle Flame Hammer, I was dealing somewhere between 500 and 600 damage on my combos, and that's not good enough because what it means is I'm going to have to catch my opponent 3 times in a row with the R1 combo. With the Great Hammer, you really want to only have to catch your opponent twice, and that's because it's so hard to catch a skilled player with such a slow move, right? You really want to be able to 2-hit them, because if you can't 2-hit them, there's a good chance you'll lose the match. After we get past the problem of the damage on the Gargoyle Flame Hammer, we move right into the next problem with the moveset. So it has the typical, you know, 2-hand R1. It has a typical Great Hammer R2. Then you have the weapon art. The weapon art is one of the ways that Great Hammers try to stand out amongst each other. This one lacks perseverance, which I'm not even a big fan of perseverance. But what it has instead of perseverance is kind of like this weird stomp, right? It stomps by throwing the hilt of the weapon into the ground, and then you can either go into the R1 or you can use this kind of weird flamethrower attack that tracks. It's kind of like a like a Great Hammer version of Fire Surge? I don't know. But the problem with it is you're just stuck there while it's active, and your opponent can actually roll right into it, right behind you, and backstab you. So you have to be very, very selective with when you use it, and even if you do land it, you know, you probably do between 150 to 300 damage tops, in my opinion. That's the most you'll get out of it, if you catch anyone at all. Because once they see the stomp, they know that your next move is either going to be the R1, or it's going to be the flamethrower, or you're going to roll. One of those three. So it's not very hard to get around that weapon art at all in like a try-hard duel. Now if you're using it in like a group fight, totally different story. Group fight, you know, it's a lot of fun. I would say a lot more consistent, especially if you use it on somebody who's not ready to respond to it, right? He's in the middle of doing something else. It's kind of an interesting ranged option because it actually has a decent amount of range to it. Alright, well, is there anything positive to say about this Great Hammer? There is. It has the longest range. Well, it ties with Vort and Dragoontooth for having the longest range in the game for a Great Hammer. So it has good range. At the same time, since it scales on intelligence and faith, what you can do is you can actually decide to bring a utility spell. In my case, I brought Warmth. And Warmth, I've learned with ultra weapons, with Great Hammers, Warmth can be pretty deadly. I've discovered there's this thing in the game where if you and your opponent heal, if you're the one that has the poise weapon, it's actually okay. It's okay to let your opponent heal as long as you're still mostly two-shotting them. See, that's where the damage with the Gargoyle Flame Hammer becomes a problem once again. Because if I was using a Great Hammer that dealt more damage, like let's say the Old King's Great Hammer, where I can mostly two-shot my opponent, you know, there's a good chance that he'll be two-shot. That healing orb, the Warmth healing orb, is very dangerous for them, because if they get caught in an R1 combo, I'll still maintain a huge health lead. And yeah, that's how it is with all ultra weapons I've been learning. If both you and your opponent are healing, and you've got the ultra weapon that can 2-hit, that's okay, because when you 2-hit them, it's going to fuck them up so bad. they're not going to come back from that very easily. Whereas if you heal all the way up, it's going to take them a long time to bring you back down, giving you more chances to get that heavy damage out. So, pairing warmth with the Great Hammer is pretty dangerous. Yeah, you know, you stand in a circle, your opponent can't really challenge your poise. What they can do is try to roll around you and just try to win the fight in very close range. And they're very capable of doing that, unless you're very clever and you have like a dagger hidden. See, they can try to roll behind you for a backstab, they can try to roll into you while you're using your R1, but before you run out of stamina, you can bring out your dagger and let them know, hey, I'm not going to let you roll into me, I'm going to use my dagger and, I don't know, like my Dragon Head Shield. I like to use Dragon Head Shield as well, that's a really good one. So, you can stay in that orb, heal up, and try your best to keep opponents out, but again, it's okay if they jump in, let them jump in. You know, if both of you get all the way back up to full health, that's okay. Bring the Lloyd Shield Ring, right? Your opponent won't always think to do that. Have the Lloyd Shield Ring with you, you know, probably trigger again. Keep it active as much as you can. And just land those hits when you can with the Great Hammer. You'll deal like 500, 600 damage, and that's a significant chunk of damage for them to try and heal up on it. It starts to get harder and harder for them. And at the same time, you have the best poise in the game with the Great Hammer, okay? So, I did pair warmth with the Gargoyle Flame Hammer, and overall I felt like it was doing alright in duels, but it was having typical Great Hammer problems, and there was nothing about the Gargoyle Flame Hammer that really saved it from those problems, right? I didn't find myself using the weapon art very often at all. When I did, it was just because I was playing around. It wasn't because I was taking the match as seriously as I should, right? Like, 'cause if my opponent is further away, I would much rather change my positioning, because what I really want to do is land the R1 combo or the R2. I don't really care about getting like a fire attack with the weapon art in, but it's fun when I'm messing around. So, with this weapon having kind of low damage, I felt like it also didn't do very well in invasions. I did take it out for a few invasions, but remember, you can use this at very low SL levels, so you could do low level invasions, because it only has a strength requirement of 22, right? So remember that. The other thing that I found kind of disappointing in the Gargoyle Flame Hammer, and this isn't as important, is the fact that it acts a lot like a torch, but it's not truly a torch. Like if you get maggots on you or whatever it is that the flies or the giant maggot men spit up on you, right? If you get that buildup, Gargoyle Flame Hammer doesn't fix it, so it's kind of like a pseudo torch. You can see in dark areas, which even that's not very important in the campaign, but you can't heal yourself of the maggots. You still have to have an actual torch. Come on, From, what were you thinking? So that's just a small gripe. You know, obviously in campaign mode, in PvE, it does just fine because it's a Great Hammer, and Great Hammers do terrifically well in PvE. Alright guys, well I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section what you'd like to see next, and I'll see you next time.